What did he take?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, let me get my gloves on and I'm gonna get him with Narcan, okay? What's his name, baby?
It's a deadly addiction, claiming more lives than car crashes or even gun violence.
Where's 108?
Tear open package and remove pads. It is now safe to touch the patient. Start CPR.
More than 900 Americans from all walks of life now die each week from opioid drug overdoses.
Let me pull them out. Get them on the ground.
It's a national crisis triggered by painkiller pills.
He's not breathing.
But I want the American people to know the federal government is aggressively fighting the opioid epidemic on all fronts.
2 million Americans are now addicted to prescription or illicit opioids, 4 times the number of 20 years ago. And a brand called Oxycontin led the way.
That drug just about wiped this county out. It was so powerful.
There are more injection drug users in San Francisco than there are high school students.
The scale of it is absolutely huge. It's block after block after block of people of all ages, races and gender in various stages of addiction, some looking like they're right near the end of their journey, others just starting out to go down the same dangerous road. And I have to say, it's really confronting seeing so much of this.
On the streets of New York, protesters are clear on who to blame for the opioid crisis. The Sackler family are American establishment. They built a $13 billion fortune upon their private company, Purdue Pharma. Purdue created Oxycontin, a highly addictive prescription painkiller. It's an opioid double the strength of morphine. The Sacklers are big philanthropists, donating millions to America's prestigious museums and galleries.
I was addicted to Oxycontin. They tried to say that it was for peace of mind and social calm. I took it for those reasons, and I ended up locked in my room for 3 years.
Renowned photographer Nan Goldin leads a campaign to shame these grand institutions into rejecting the Sackler dollars.
We're here to call out the Sackler family who've become synonymous with the opioid crisis. We're here to call out all the museums who allow the Sackler name to line their halls, tarnish their wings, who honor the family who made billions off the bodies of hundreds of thousands.
Inside the Sackler-funded Guggenheim Museum, a reminder of a boast by Purdue President Richard Sackler that Oxycontin would generate a blizzard of prescriptions and billions in profits.
And the Sacklers continue to profit off the bodies of 400,000 people.
The elusive Sacklers never speak to the media. But now, across America, the victims are coming for the family in a fight back that could become the biggest class action in US history.
We have to bring down the Sackler family. They should be in jail next to El Chapo.
Deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia lies the town of Welch, capital of McDowell County, one of the poorest in the country. McDowell leads the nation in per capita overdose deaths. about 20% of the community is addicted to pills, heroin, alcohol, or ice. The abuse is largely hidden behind crumbling facades.
There's a burnt-out building there. Used to be a school building. McDowell County was a thriving county at one time, in the early 50s and late 60s, and even in the 70s when I graduated from high school in 1973. Anyone could get a job anywhere as they wanted to with the mining industry.
Martin West is county sheriff. This former miner witnessed the decline of the local coal industry and downward spiral.
The county has probably torn down hundreds of houses that have become dilapidated, and people's moved out and left, went to other states and other counties.
A part-time missionary who served in Haiti is now trying to save his own community.
People wouldn't think that this is America.
No. So I said, I've been in Haiti, it's been pretty bad. You couldn't find a job, and people turned to drugs and alcohol because they were overwhelmed with the depression and the mental anguish that they were suffering. It's just like the pharmaceutical companies, billion-dollar industry. They find depressed areas and they know what's people there got problems, and then they introduce them to this and that, pills and drugs of any type. And that's what they do.
Patients in pain often have problems finding effective relief.
Purdue aggressively exploited this ready-made market with its new high-potency painkiller Oxycontin, even giving out free starter packs.
Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
What was an end-of-life medication was, at the Sacklers' direction, dispensed for everything from emotional distress to bad backs.
This medication does not turn you into a zombie. It has turned me into an active person again.
I got my life back now. Now I can enjoy every day that I live. I can really enjoy myself.
I am kind of ashamed to admit, but I'm honest enough to say, yeah, I've been down the beaten path before, trying to clean up, and I have been for a minute now. Just trying to do better and stay that way.
A month out of rehab, and Rocky Coon is determined to break the grip of addiction that's devastated his family.
My mother, of all people, my mom, she did it. She battled it. She was a lot of the doctors, they've been getting arrested for writing prescriptions, and my mom's doctor was one. My mom died. She died of a car wreck, but addiction was her best friend. Me personally, I didn't do drugs. My mom died. My life fell to pieces, and I jumped headfirst into all of them.
Rocky grew up in a neighbouring county. It wasn't just at home, but at school too, that he was mourning the casualties of Oxycontin addiction.
My graduating class, probably a third of them are dead already. I'm just 33 years old. There's no sense in it. It's all drugs. It's fed into a community that we didn't have a chance. None of them. Nobody had a chance. Addiction is a real thing. I started when I was 12. I had 5 state championships, Tri-State Golden Gloves Championship.
Rocky's dad, a local school teacher, put together this boxing gym to get people off the street and away from poverty and drugs. Redemption in the ring.
This is my world. I love this place. I love boxing. It's a way of talking to it's one way to get to know somebody. When you throw hands with them, you earn respect. Other places that I'm used to living, I find the trouble. And at least here, I'm on my skateboard, or I'm in the gym, or I'm working out. You know, it's something more productive than street life.
Just down the road in the town of War is one source of McDowell County's misery.
Past the last bridge, as you're going toward that intersection of Berwyn and Lake.
Is that in the city limits? We had a drug bust up here about a couple of weeks ago. We arrested about 8. And every time we get out like this and go up and down the different areas of the county, people will come up to me and want to give me a drug tip.
But the biggest dealers were legal. Pharmacies like this one dispensing massive quantities of what derisively became known as hillbilly heroin.
This was one of the ones that was closed down. There's another one.
In total, 12 million pills were dumped in a county of only 20,000 people, pushed by compliant doctors and pharmacists.
These are the small operations. They call them pill mills, and they were closed down because of that situation. We've had several of them within McDowell County, and this is one of them. Most of them's got a drive-through. Yeah. They're wanting to make the money fast and see how much damage they can do is what my observation of them is.
Sheriff West's furious that it took 15 years before tighter controls were finally imposed on Oxycontin. In 2007, Purdue was fined $880 million for misleading doctors and patients on the drug's addiction risks. By then, it was too late.
That drug just about wiped this county out. It was so powerful. And it was the talk of the town, the talk of the county, the talk of the state. Every night on the news, you'd hear of someone dying in the state or in other states because of Oxycontin. And it was so addictive. And they knew that. The pharmaceuticals knew that.
Welch has been ground zero of America's opioid crisis for about 2 decades now. And while it's slowly strangling the life out of towns and cities like this, it's also spreading like wildfire right across the United States. On the other side of the country, in one of the biggest, most vibrant and best prepared cities with a long history of harm reduction, they're being swamped by the next wave of this crisis.
San Francisco, liberal, rich, tech capital of the world. Despite decades of experience in progressive drug treatment, forged at the height of the AIDS crisis, the city's buckling under the weight of addiction. Downtown, injecting drug user numbers have tripled since the crisis first struck far off Appalachia, though harm reduction programs have kept the death toll lower than other cities.
Don't try this at home.
There are more injection drug users in San Francisco, about 25,000, than there are high school students, 16,000. Just a couple of blocks from here is probably the highest level of a population that we see in street use in heroin and homelessness.
Inside City Hall, there's growing fury at the Sackler family and their pharmaceutical company, Purdue. City Attorney Dennis Herrera makes a direct link between pills and heroin.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, 4 of 5 injectable drug users started on when it comes getting opioids, whether it be Oxycontin, prescription or non-prescription pill taking. So there is a direct correlation between the two.
How much of a burden is this on your community trying to deal with the mess of this opioid crisis?
It's incalculable. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that the taxpayers of San Francisco are forced to expend because of, at least to some degree, for problems created by others. In terms of effort, we have been a pioneer. In terms of result, demonstrating the magnitude of the problem, we have been overwhelmed.
San Francisco has now joined 1,600 other cities and counties in suing Purdue Pharma and 8 Sackler family members who profit from the company.
It makes sense that we would use the full power of our legal arsenal to make sure that those responsible for creating this epidemic are held to account. The family itself from Purdue gets about, I think it's $1 billion a year that inures to them in terms of payments that go to the family as a result of sales of Oxycontin.
That's extraordinary.
A lot of money.
So they're profiting while much of the rest of the country is suffering.
I think that's a fair statement.
On the streets, George has been living rough for a while. He now shoots up heroin, but says nearly everyone in this alley got their first taste with Oxycontin.
Probably everybody started like that, because that's how you're introduced to the drugs, you know, is by pills, you know, and then little by little, you know, it's like your money gets tight and you're just like, well, where could I get something close to this but cheaper? And then it's heroin, you know. I do sort of think that those pharmaceutical companies do play a big role, and that's why my mom always just tell me, don't trust doctors. They're not your friend. You know, these doctors out here are not anywhere near your friends.
Your family contact you at all? What? I remember I helped you get shoes one day with your mom. Yeah.
Police here know the users. They have to balance treating this as a health crisis as well as a criminal problem, aware that George is battling to pay for multiple daily hits of Mexican heroin.
This is like a dime, you know, $10. You know, $10 will get you, you know, cool high. On a daily basis, I probably spend like $50 to $80.
It's clear that addiction doesn't discriminate.
All over America is going on right now, and it's all the youth, you know, getting hooked on this shit. I just think it's embarrassing, you know, because other countries aren't going through this.
There's still poverty, a sense of desperation. There's still public drug dealing and drug use.
San Francisco-based drug expert Professor Dan Ciccarone travels the country, mapping the wreckage of the opioid crisis. He's tracked Oxycontin use morphing into a second wave of heroin injecting, and now into an even deadlier third wave, a synthetic opioid called fentanyl, coming in from Mexico and China.
Fentanyl is about 40 times as potent by weight as heroin. And so because of that sheer potency, we're concerned that it's too much for the typical human to consume, therefore higher rates of overdose.
Now,
there's also a fourth wave, if you will, coming up right behind the opioid crisis, which is stimulants. East Coast cocaine, West Coast methamphetamine. We're seeing a lot of new meth users out here. They're mixing meth and heroin. I think we're about halfway through it. And I know that's terrible, bad news. But if you see the rate of decline now, we are seeing a leveling off in the pill overdose deaths. We are seeing a leveling off of heroin-only overdose deaths. The fentanyl curve is still going up. It'll take 10 years to get the baseline.
George may not have that long. He's graduated from pills to heroin mixed with meth that's now laced with fentanyl. The daily fix has become a raging habit.
Whoever's putting that shit into all the drugs is smart, because fentanyl is very addictive. So, you know, if you spike that shit in every drug, every user's gonna fiend it. You're wondering why you keep on coming back so quick to get a hit. It's because the fucking fentanyl in that shit, you know? That's why I know I'm coming back every 30 minutes for this shit. Because back then I could get high and just, you know, go about my day. But now it's like that shit's calling me, you know? It's like, you know, it's like a real, it's like a fucking, like a King Kong on my back.
So yeah, it's always good to come up and get a look at, you know, this is like Glide's domain. We've been in all of these hotels here. We've taught people overdose prevention. We've done HIV tests.
Paul Harkin is another who knows these streets better than most, delivering syringes and disease tests to the homeless.
Like in the city, there's about 122-ish of these single room occupancy hotels. You know, low income. Some people are only allowed to stay for 90 days. And then
He's a director at Glide, a social justice movement founded by the United Methodist Church that for half a century has been saving lives.
Organisations like Glide Harm Reduction are absolutely what's required to get us to begin to dismantle the war on drugs and start to treat drug users with compassion and with evidence-based intervention. The last numbers we have were 2017, I believe. There was 72,000 overdose deaths nationally. I mean, it's just an incredible volume of mostly preventable deaths. People in harm reduction know that there has always been an opioid crisis in other communities, and what we've seen here is the changing demographics where more white people are being impacted by this.
Guys, we're out here.
On any given night, we'll give out maybe 3,000 to 5,000 syringes to people who inject drugs. Usually we give out maybe 7 or 8 Narcan kits for people to prevent overdose.
So the purpose of the what you're doing now is to stop the spread of disease primarily.
That's the primary thing, you know. But well, no, you know what? I'd say that's part of it, but I'd say also part of it is just connecting with people.
You make it so easy too.
Then, when the FDA started to clamp down on Oxycontin, what we saw then was a lot of people who had developed a habit having to switch to heroin. And we saw a sort of explosion of people looking for heroin and then subsequently fentanyl. We're seeing more fentanyl intercuts in the drugs, and overdose deaths this year are going to be up.
I've OD'd a couple times, you know, and I'm still here. You know, I try to hurt myself a few times too. I've been through it.
Alicia has been using drugs for decades and knows the reality of that deadly shift.
Right now, I'm really struggling right now because I'm out here by myself. My family members now, they won't hardly talk to me too much anymore because of where I'm at and what I'm
doing. Just across town, Glide's gospel choir reaches out to San Francisco's elite. they mingle with America's most famous recovering Oxycontin addict. Former Democratic Congressman Patrick Kennedy, son of a late senator, nephew of an assassinated president. He deploys the political star power of the family name.
There's no question that this was a drug that knew no socioeconomic, gender background. It really was meant for anybody who was unsuspecting. And if that person also had a high propensity for addiction, as I did, then it was off to the races the moment it was prescribed. They over-marketed a clearly addictive drug called Oxycontin, knowing full well that it was addictive, much like the tobacco industry knew for generations that cigarettes were addictive, but refused to acknowledge it.
Tonight is about fundraising for hospital beds to treat those felled by the spin cycle of drug addiction, mental illness, and homelessness.
If it's good enough for cardiovascular disease, if it's good enough for cancer, it ought to be good enough for mental illness and addiction, which affects every single family in this great country of ours. Thank you very much.
It's a test Kennedy says the Trump White House and Congress are failing miserably, allocating barely 20% of the funds dedicated to fight HIV at the height of the AIDS crisis.
I was serving on the President Trump's opioid panel on recommendations to fight this epidemic, and I was shocked knowing, as we all do, that President Trump comes from a family that has been impacted by alcoholism and addiction, that he would not take this historic moment and really run with it.
The well-heeled crowd dig deep. A $500,000 pledge here, $1 million donation there. Patrick Kennedy wants billions more from the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma.
There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to get a tobacco-sized verdict against Purdue Pharma and those who are also culpable in this conspiracy and this corruption.
Purdue Pharma continues to deny any responsibility, accusing critics of exaggeration, blaming users and drug dealers for the crisis. The company's considering declaring bankruptcy to head off the looming avalanche of lawsuits. 130 Americans now die of opioid overdoses every day. Time is not on the side of those at the bottom of the opioid spiral. They may not live to see a settlement.
You know, when you're involved in an addiction like this, it's hard. And it's sad, you know, because you just feel so lost and alone. You feel like you have nobody.